back to Unraveling the Brain. Dr. Loren Lyman here with another amazing parent here, Mr. Aleksandar, all the way from Serbia. We are blessed to have an opportunity to work with his son this week and last week. And last week, he and I had a really unique discussion open up about the physics of lasers. And so we wanted to talk about his journey, what brought him here, what kind of changes you've noticed in your son just in these last couple of weeks. And then we'll dive into some of the laser physics. And for all of those really interested, this could be a really interesting conversation. So I'm excited to chat. And first of all, what led you to Infinity, and how's your experience been so far?
First of all, thank you for having me. So the first impression was basically what I've expected. If there's anything that you put on social media, I watched it a couple of times before we came here. So the room and environment, everything was familiar. And yeah, the way I found about your clinic is, as I think it's usual, through the social media. A friend of mine sent me a short video with some great parent story. I followed that up, and initially when I heard about the lasers, about your clinic, and on the short video there was some laser therapy shown, I wasn't surprised at all, because for the last couple of years I really dig into research to try to find some answers, what could help with Marco, because for his ASD, the usual treatments like speech therapy, occupational therapy, they just provided, negligible results. Let's say it like that. So, and I was familiar about the laser research. I have a background in physics, so I knew about the safety, but all the research I've reviewed was done on mice or rabbits, or on a human cells, but in a glass, not a living person. And when I saw that someone is actually implementing laser therapy on the patients in clinic, I was like, yeah, this sounds great. This is. I assumed by then you had your protocols, the dosages, everything. So I really spent, I think, the next couple of months just inputting everything you put out there. I also bought Dr. Josh's parent courses. There's a 3-month subscription. So I watched all the courses twice, had a couple of webinars with Dr. Josh, basically tried to accumulate as much knowledge as I can before we came here. So yeah, it was fun. And for the first 2 weeks, I saw the episodes, and usually the most impressive ones are when the parents come here for the second time, and then they say what they observed before the first and second intensive. So I didn't coming here. I didn't expect for him to explode, but we noticed some things that were quite rare or never happened before. So at the weekend we went to the zoo, and usually he wasn't interested in zoo animals, unless we prompted him, to maybe not. But this time it was different, especially for the penguins. For some reason, but penguins are also social. So I think that influenced Marco to, just, he was like observing them, trying to kick the glass to have their attention. That lasted a couple of minutes, and I was impressed. Me and my wife look at each other, and then let me film this just to have some proof for the grandparents, etc. That was one thing. Also, I've noticed, regardless of him driving the bike without additional wheels, and he can drive inline skates, and he learned to swim this summer. After watching Dr. Josh video, I saw that there are a lot of things related to gross motor skills that were kind of masked with his behavior. I never thought of that. So he couldn't stand with a feet one in front of the other, and jumping down the stairs and jumping up the stairs. That's something that he will rarely to never do unless I prompt him. But he did it at the place where we are staying. He just now jumps down the stairs. It seems like he feels like control of his body is
more
improved.
confidence. Yeah,
more confidence. So that's a big thing. And also, because we already got the laser, so we had a little bit of experimenting during the weekend. On Saturday, we did a speech protocol. It was about a half an hour, and that night we put him to sleep, and he was a little bit restless. My wife got annoyed. She was like, "Go to sleep, just calm down and sleep." And he started whistling, just laying in bed. It was dark. We didn't saw him, but I can't do it now. I can't do it now.
It's hard to do it on the spot sometimes. There you go.
Yeah, and it lasted. We were like, okay, this never happened before. So you also did it. So he had 1 week of speech protocol. It was enough for him to produce that sound that he didn't. I assume that he maybe sensed some more control over the mouth. So to just try to experiment. That's my assumption. And we have a couple of more other things that we noticed that were rare. There's a girl in the place where we are staying who is very, social and cute, and he also interacted with her. It lasted for a couple of, maybe half an hour, maybe, just running around, laughing together. He had that, but usually only with his sister when prompted, but this was spontaneous. So in a week, I think that's good. That those are good signals.
Yeah, and so a couple of talking points from your observations as a parent. One, you say most of the success stories are when people come back, and Dr. Joshua say, hey, we're really starting in a developmental process right now. We can see a lot of changes in a week or 2 or 3 or 4, however long a child's here, but really the nudge developmentally that is gained here, kids will take and build and improve. And when we see them back, if we're blessed to be able to see them back, they're almost always in a better developmental position. So it's not like, hey, 2 days from now is your last day. That's all we're going to get out of Marco's development. It's like, no, like I'm excited to see how he continues to develop from the changes that he's gained here, the laser that you have at home, the supplements that have been recommended, just the lifestyle and environmental things that we can control or that help you control. But then also the neuromotor development that we observe here, making progress with his primitive reflexes. That's a huge indication that his nervous system is becoming more stable and more mature. And then also improvements in his motor skills. And so whether that's confidence with jumping, whistling, motor control of his face, building awareness and ability to control those areas. It's a huge first step. But then also socially, maybe he's having improvements and engagement improvements. And so all of those are observations that, hey, he's taking developmental steps that are positive for him, even just a short period of time. And how does he feel about coming here? He seems like a pretty chill kid, honestly. Like when I've got to work with him, he's just pretty calm and kind of looking at me like, hey, what are you doing? And what's his how does he present when he's coming into?
Yeah, well, when the Christine comes to picking up, he even don't wait for me and my wife to have a short chat. He was just picking around.
He knows it's his turn to
like,
do some activities.
Let's go. And the H-bot, actually, I wasn't surprised about the H-bot. He just jumped in there and stayed with me for a couple of hours now. That's fine. So he's easygoing, but I should also mention that we really have a very strict diet for him for a couple of years. So he's basically on a carnivore diet. I mean, there are a lot of terms, but that's basically what he is. Mainly animal-based foods. We try to give him organic. And one thing that popped in my mind when on his initial exam with Dr. Ashley was, I told her we saw a significant improvement when we eliminated gluten. We didn't just eliminate gluten; we eliminated all the grains at once. So then, for the couple of years, I keep a diary for the last 5 years, so I can go back and see, every day what the behaviors was like, what the sleep pattern was like, what he ate, what the did he have bowel movement or not. I have all that written down from the last 5 years, and those 3 weeks when we get him on the gluten-free diet, there was some similar to this one, But then with the diet, it just plateaued, and when we eliminate a little bit more fiber or plant-based produce, so we also see some more improvement, but then in plateau. So diet, I think, is a piece in a puzzle, but certainly not the whole picture.
Yeah, definitely a big piece. So with carnivore or like an animal base, you're decreasing those blood sugar spikes and fluctuations and drops. Those are some of the most inflammatory things for the brain. And that's something we were talking about doing a video yesterday. Some kids will come in here and they'll bring cookies, and mom and dad will say, hey, it's gluten-free. I'm like, well, their blood sugar is still getting dysregulated from this.
Like a wave.
Yeah, like a wave. And ups and downs are really hard on the brain. And ups especially, so blood sugar spikes can trigger neurological inflammation. So that's probably why, hey, we made these dietary changes. We cut out these grains that create that blood sugar dysregulation. And so we're not seeing these fluctuations in that neural inflammation quite as much. And that's a big first step. Some food proteins, gluten being one of them, have a phenomenon called molecular mimicry or cross-reactivity, where they look like certain proteins in the brain. So taking out inflammatory proteins, that's a huge step. And so you've taken measures to make these 2 weeks more and more therapeutic for him. Everything you've done from lifestyle, nutrition, activity, sleep, those are all things that are supportive for a developing brain. And making those steps are really necessities, like developmentally. Like what's good for people is what's good for kids' brains. And so when kids come here in a healthier status, I feel like we make even more momentum. And so I applaud you for making those steps. And it sounds like you're definitely interested in the scientific method and documentation. What led you to your interest in laser therapy? You said that you understood the safety of it. Some of the studies are limited to mice and animals because they can't biopsy human brains after. But a lot of the biological mechanisms that are observed in those animal studies can be applied to humans, saying, hey, like these cells change, like the function of these cells change. And I was personally reading some research as a literature review on laser therapy and seizure disorders, which that's not an issue for you, correct?
No.
Yeah.
No.
But it talked about the genetic improvements in the brain. So stimulating mitochondria, making mitochondria healthier, essentially make the cells healthier. And it said that it makes cells more resistant to stress and improved basically stamina in areas of the brain. And those are two big things for development. So what we can say is, okay, if lasers do this, they decrease neural inflammation, they help support mitochondrial function. And we also know that with autism, there's typically mitochondrial dysfunction is a hallmark characteristic or underlying mechanism. And for your son in particular, and not just him, many kids with an autism spectrum diagnosis, is the presence of neurological inflammation. And so that's measurable on labs. It's something that we see a lot of. And so when we have a therapy like laser that can support mitochondrial function and decrease that neural inflammation, like Dr. Josh on one of his webinars this the other day, he said, 15 years, he feels that photobiomodulation is going to be a universal first step for people with autism because of how it makes our brains healthier. Can you touch on that with your background in really high education in physics? Our discussion the other day was intriguing to me. So you've taken the laser course, and so you have our understanding of that. And one thing you told me was, so there's this limited body of research on using over people's brains. So there's some, most of it's neurodegenerative conditions, but you said that the information gathered here, the proprietary information that we have, might be one of the biggest bodies of information available in the world. And there's some clinics out there that have been using laser therapy with a lot of success and condensing that into protocols that you touched on, dosages, frequencies that we like and that we respond from. But what from that, what really intrigued you about laser therapy? And then I'd really like if you could share what you told me about sunlight the other day. That was really
caught
my attention.
Back of the envelope calculation, yeah. Well, because if you don't mind, can we just demystify the term spectrum? Because I think it confuses a lot of parents. If you don't mind, maybe
Sure.
me to
Yeah.
minute or two. So let's imagine that the sun is able only to emit photons with a discrete wavelengths, like 1 nanometer, 2 nanometers. It's not the case, but let's say that's the case. And you have this laser, which has an infrared component, which is 808 nanometers. But on the box, on the specification, it says 808 plus or minus 15 nanometers. So I assume that when the parent buys a laser and sees that number, it just mean nothing to him if he doesn't have the technical background. So what that basically means is the majority of the photons that come out of the laser when he's on infrared mode are exactly 808 nanometers. That's the majority. But they have some of 807 and some of 809 and some of 806, 810. But if you were to plot the intensity of light, it will not be like a needle. It will be like a very, very narrow bell-like curve. And that's basically it. This is just a way to graphically represent what kind of light comes out of the laser. I was intrigued, because when I watched the course and I learned something about the dosages, I was like, this is interesting. Why 5 minutes? Why 5 joules? How did it came to be? I assume for you it was initially maybe trial and error, and you looked at the research not to overdo it. I assume that's the case. And over time, you refine the protocols, see what best works in a clinic, which is, I think, the most important one. I mean, theory is one. Having nice theory is one, but you need results in the real world. So then I calculated, and it turned out that when your home laser is on the maximum and you're doing the infrared color, 1 minute of that equals spending out on the sun on a daylight when there are no clouds for about 3.5 hours. Which means that doing 5 minutes of laser on the maximum power transcranially amounts to about being outside the whole day. I was like, this is interesting. And I did it pretty good calculation. I mean, it's not that good that I should publish it, but that's, those are quite nice results. And I was like, well, this is interesting. Maybe the technology is whispering to us, hey, you as a species evolved under that star. Maybe you should be a little bit more outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because the dosages that you are prescribing to us are similar to being outside the entire day. Of course, there are parts of the world with a lot of rain, a lot of clouds, and what you said repeatedly on podcast that the young children have better improvement. Well, maybe that's because the lack of sunlight during their development was smaller, and you need to input a little bit less than maybe that's what is the case with the older children. I feel like whatever you're doing laser light therapy, you're like inputting the light that the patient should get that day, and then maybe that he missed yesterday or the day before. I mean, the numbers, this might sound like a wild, proposal, but it's reasonable. The numbers are there, so that was quite.
Well, there's photoreceptors in our cells, and so
Yeah.
and that's one of the mechanisms is the light energy interacts with those photoreceptors similar to a drug, but the light is a natural source. We're not having to consume a drug. We're not having to take something that has side effects or changes our physiology negatively. It's we're providing something that's natural. And some people look at lasers and think, oh, radiation, and it's non-radiating or non-ionizing radiation. It's the spectrum that's all around us all the time, and as far as natural light. And then the sun is producing a very wide spectrum of wavelengths. We use isolated wavelengths that have been identified to be therapeutic, wavelengths that have been identified to actually penetrate the brain. And then mitochondrial function has been measured to be improved with those particular wavelengths of light. We touched on infrared, and infrared kind of, it bores some people because they might have an infrared sauna or they might have an infrared panel, but the physics of lasers are different, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Because with the laser, you have what's called coherent light. But that basically means, and I'm apologizing to any physicists here, so I'm not using the most technical language, but that basically means you have a lot of clones, like all those photons are like clones, exactly the same, and they're in the phase, which means that you have a wave. If you use a wave analogy, like a lot of small waves that have crests and peaks and values on exactly the same time. They're in phase, and also the light has is a coherent, and that also improves penetration. So there are some benefits to using the
infrared laser is different than other sources of infrared, like that infrared sauna. So just the mechanism and actually getting that energy to the brain. Also, pulse frequency is a
I
variable.
forgot to mention that.
Yeah. And so there's different research on continuous versus different pulse frequency in the brain, and a neuron especially likes a pulsed frequency of photons. And then we also use complementary wavelengths. And so infrared to me is really necessary for the brain. Red also does penetrate into the brain. And so there's supported benefits of that. And then we look at some of the higher frequencies and the shorter wavelengths of violet. And one that we've been really excited about recently is the development and the outcomes that we've observed with green. And you talked about the high energy of green being some of its, maybe you said you apologize to any physicists, I'll apologize to you, but some of that is being diffused by the skull into the brain in going from a high frequency to a low frequency, but those low frequencies are still therapeutic. So it might be green reaching the skull, but by the time it's into the brain, it might be in the red spectrum somewhere.
Yeah. I think that's the benefit of using the maybe higher energy photons, because I think there are no studies about that. When we had an input like a light, it's a green laser, but then you have a skin and then you have a skull. And I would assume, I would argue that basically by the time that light reaches the brain tissue, it's not actually the photons that were emitted from the light, but secondary and tertiary produce photons. But because that light will interact with the molecules in the skull, or in the blood, and they will excite the atoms or molecules in there. But usually when the atom drinks the green photon, he might not spit the green photon. He might spit. He could actually usually spit the photon with lesser energy, and the rest of the energy is usually what we say thermalized. It's just converted into heat, but probably some small heat. So by the time that the green laser light reaches the brain tissue, I would assume it's not just the green peak. It's the green local peak with a tail that maybe has some smaller peaks. And I would assume that if you said that you noticed a lot of changes clinically, kids are calmer, I would assume that all of those, the tail and with all those frequencies maybe have some role to do with it, because the green is not penetrating very deep. It's absorbed, but I assume that's all for the good, basically. So it's not like infrared. Infrared is like, it will penetrate in the tissue. It will just be absorbed less. And what we noticed on Marco when we did the speech protocol with acuprobe, he was like pulling his hands. I was like trying to give him some short lesson in manhood, like, yeah, just put the head. But I haven't tried, myself. I was like, let me try it. Whoa, this actually burns a little bit because we were just touching the skin, And then my wife said, okay, let's just make a little bit of distance. Then it was fine, because we first tried on him. That was silly from us. He was like pulling the head. Why are you pulling your head? I assume that laser is, that's not a toy. I mean, if you put it on the skin, you will sense. It's not a like a serious burning sensation, but
No.
you will scratch,
Yeah, you feel the warmth. You feel the energy from it.
Yeah.
And you'll feel that more, even more with a wavelength like violet, because it's so highly absorbed by the skin, where violet does feel quite warm. And it's interesting, if you take a laser and put it over your lips, violet, you can feel that warmth. Green It doesn't feel very warm. Red a little bit, and then infrared no longer feels warm. And so I feel like the green and infrared are actually penetrating at a higher rate, and it's not so highly absorbed by the skin tissue where you're perceiving that heat as heat.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
You have absorption via volume, and with green and violet, you have all that energy is absorbed skin deep. So that's
Yeah. From what I've seen, it said that green penetrates the skin easily.
Mhm.
And so it's a great resource for using over carotid arteries, the radial arteries, the arteries of the feet, more superficial tissues, the vagus nerve, as it traverses down the neck. And so we use it in that way, but we also use it transcranially because we do observe neurological change in our clinic. Some people, from a mitochondrial stability standpoint, cannot tolerate high levels of infrared right away because it is so efficiently reaching the brain. Some people don't have the antioxidant capacity to quench the small amount of reactive oxygen species that are produced in a laser therapy treatment. But as they build and as they benefit and accumulate the cumulative effects of laser therapy over time, their mitochondria become more efficient. The cells become more efficient. So they're actually their threshold for benefiting from higher doses, or they can tolerate higher doses well. And to me, that's another benefit of a high and a low frequency laser, is that we can transition from a high frequency emphasis to a low frequency emphasis over time. And we have the flexibility from a physics standpoint and a biological mechanism standpoint. We just have a wider range of therapeutic wavelengths with a high green and a low red.
Yeah.
Or infrared, pardon me.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. I would never, guess that, and that's why it was interesting when we met first time that you say, hey, initially we're going to do lasering in cycles. 17% of the time it's going to be green, the rest infrared, and then decrease the green, increase the infrared. Actually, it makes sense, yeah. And from what I'm seeing until now, Marco is, just doing fine. When you talk about the sensation, do you mean like with the usual attachment or with the acuprobe on the lips?
Usual.
Oh, usual. The acuprobe is like it condenses the light really, really. That's why I assume you get the more of sensation.
Yeah, you have a slight beam divergence with a standard hood.
Yeah.
And with a probe, you just go into a beam convergence, and so all that energy is just really highly concentrated in one spot. And I'd assume there's some degree of well, if it's converging at that point, and to your point, even with that acuprobe, moving that point up or down, you play with that convergence point, and so
we moved it just a little bit, maybe half an inch from his scene. He was fine, and I didn't. So that was a lesson for me in the future. Just try it on yourself before
Sure. And we notice that with people with like beautiful, more pigmented skin.
Mm-hmm.
And so people with different skin tones or darker skin tones, they will actually feel that warmth more with particular wavelengths.
Yeah, it protects them from the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Probably that's the same reason they have high more let's call it absorbent coefficient for the skin.
Sure.
Yeah, so
that's
the
melanin is absorbing more.
It makes sense
through pigmentation.
Makes sense.
Well, anything else you want to touch on about your experience here? First of all, you're all the way from Serbia. How cool is that? Like, I don't know. We've seen a lot of European families, which is always a pleasure. And there's actually a handful of Europeans here this week.
Yeah, there's a family from Croatia.
Yeah, yep. And all the way from Serbia. So that's a big commitment coming this far.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was surprised because when I had the initial call with Dr. Josh, first thing that I asked him, do you know where Serbia is? He was like, actually, I do. Because me and my son, have this thing with the world map, and they put the pin whenever somebody comes from the new country. So they investigated, the Google awareness. So he was aware. We had some patients from Romania. I was like, yeah, that's interesting. I said, well, if you provide some good results for us, we're definitely not going to be the last, family from Serbia. That's for sure. I know a lot of people that I would recommend this. And, unfortunately, for the people coming, out of states. It's financially, it's it's a stress, and it was for us. But having this experience, what I have until now, and knowing that the other therapies actually don't provide, as much of a result as we hoped for, I think this has been great until now, and we are going home, optimistic. Let's see what happens. We'll do a little bit of training with Marco, see what suits him. Maybe we'll try lasering when the kids fall asleep. But yeah, I'm hopeful. Certainly hopeful, and I would encourage other people just to investigate, see for yourself. Try to. You're great. I mean, you put a lot of things in social media. I think I needed 6 weeks, couple of hours per day. When the kids go to sleep, I'm like, after the dinner, I just watched your videos until
I bored you to sleep, is what you're saying.
Well, no, actually, it prevented me from going to. I slept less, so that's fine. And I see that for the last couple of days, I hope it's not some kind of mistake. But you put in a one day 80 new videos, like.
Is in fact not a mistake, and you can check out our entire parents course for free right now on this channel.
I saw that there are some videos from the courses,
Sure.
But there's a lot of material. So I would encourage anybody to just look at it and see the parent testimonies. I mean, if you have the means, I would, and if you have a patient at home, I would definitely recommend this one.
I think that's always been the goal: is provide information that's valuable.
Yeah.
Help parents feel empowered with the information that they gain. Say, hey, like there's things that we can do to support our kids, and we're not out here to cure anyone. It's just, and this discussion's been had here before. It's a matter of making things easier for kids, whether it's socializing, whether it's communication, whether it's their motor skills, their confidence in their body. That all adds up. And so we see a lot of changes in all of those things that I've listed off, and kids always improve. It's just fun to be a part of that. Kids improve in different ways. Kids improve in different trajectories, but it's always gratifying work, and it's great to hear back from parents what type of changes that they've observed. This, to me, it's the best job in the world. Being a part of helping a parent help their kids and working with great kids like Marco. It's really gratifying stuff. So I appreciate your willingness to bring him to us. It's an honor, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise and your understanding. And I'm excited to hear how Marco continues to improve, and I'm glad to be a small part of just your journey with him. So
yeah,
thanks so much.
Definitely stay in touch.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.